On the first day of January 2025, while the world celebrated a new beginning, Travelle Martin was simply spending time with his girlfriend, Emily Whitney. It was a quiet start to the year, but the peace of that New Year's Day would soon be shattered by a sequence of events that remained as chilling as the winter's air. Outside, a bitter cold had taken hold, turning the damp ground into an unforgiving sheet of ice. According to the statement from the Walker firm, reports allege a domestic dispute broke out between Travelle and Emily that night, yet the catalyst that set in motion this confrontation remains a haunting question. What was the true nature of this dispute, and who, if anyone, was at the center of it? If it wasn't a clash of personalities, then we must ask what led to such a perplexing moment. From this point forward, the narrative dissolves into a murky haze of uncertainty. Suddenly, and without clear explanation, Travelle made the fateful decision to flee Emily's home, disappearing through the back door and into the freezing night. The moment he stepped outside, the silence of the neighborhood was replaced by the heavy footsteps of the Comru police. What began as a personal moment between Travelle and Emily somehow developed into a police pursuit. This, ladies and gentlemen, raises a fundamental question. Why was a young black man who had earned the FedEx Bravo Zulu award for performance far beyond the call of duty suddenly the center of a manhunt involving officers, canine units, and overhead drones? I'm Kiana Canada, and this is Charlotte Croom's Right to Truth, an online inquiry into a black mother's fight for truth, an investigation that seeks to uncover the disputed events of a cold winter night where her son's remains were found in an area she and her neighbors had already searched, testing the official account and demanding answers. In a desolate wooded stretch not far from a local golf park and a lake, their grim reality began to surface. There, peeking through the unforgiving ice, were the abstract colors of a pair of men's shoes. Charlotte and her family were the ones to spot them, quickly identifying the footwear as Travelle's. The discovery brought a sickening realization. If his shoes were abandoned here in the frozen sludge, where was Travelle? Throughout the long, dark weeks of January 2025, Charlotte Croom's search for answers became a necessary undertaking. She wasn't just looking for items that gave clues about Travelle's whereabouts. She was looking for her son. This all driven by a mother's intuition that continued to intimate something was amiss. This instinct was soon validated by the Walker firm, which revealed that law enforcement had pinged Emily's phone to this exact wooded area. The digital trail ended there, leaving the community to wonder how Travelle could vanish from a site so closely explored. The predicament deepened when the Comru police returned to Emily's home with an update. Despite their pursuit, they had lost Travelle's scent. Yet the police asserted that they had uncovered Emily's phone in that same vicinity. Some evidence appeared to have mounted in the woods, yet the search for Travelle seemed to be moving in circles. At the time the Walker firm went public with these details, Travelle had been missing for 9 agonizing days. For his family, every hour passed without word turned into another grieving day. Charlotte Croom maintained that she had reached out to the Comru Police Department time and again, pleading for clarity. Each time she was met with a wall of silence that offered no comfort and even fewer facts. Why did the police department, fully aware of a mother's plight, allegedly fail to provide even the basic assurance that her son's disappearance was being treated with the urgency it deserved? The lack of transparency stands in stark contrast to international legal standards. The right to a prompt, thorough, independent, and impartial investigation is a cornerstone of global jurisprudence, designed to protect the vulnerable when they disappear into the system or disappear entirely. International law is clear. States are obligated to ensure that anyone alleging an enforced disappearance has the right to report it to competent authorities, who must then investigate the claim and be expeditious, thorough, and impartial about it. Furthermore, the responsibility of the state does not depend on a formal filing. If there are reasonable grounds to believe a person has been subjected to an enforced disappearance, the government is duty-bound to act on its own initiative. But to understand the gravity of this situation, we must first define the term. What exactly constitutes an enforced disappearance? The Oxford Dictionary defines enforced as causing something to happen by necessity or force. Ms. Croom would likely argue that Travelle's disappearance was neither a necessity nor an unavoidable requirement. It was not a natural conclusion to his life, which leaves us with force. But was there force applied that night? The dictionary alone cannot tell us what happened in those woods, but international law provides a broader lens. Article 24 of the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance defines a victim as, quote, the disappeared person and any person who has suffered harm as a direct result of an enforced disappearance, end quote. While critics might argue that the early days of January 2025 lack enough evidence to suggest Travelle suffered harm as a direct result of an enforced disappearance, Charlotte didn't need a legal brief to know the truth. She knew the disappearance was not consistent with Travelle's behavior. Though the Declaration on the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances is not binding on all states, Article 13 offers a glimmer of hope for families like Charlotte Croom's, providing a roadmap for seeking justice. It explicitly states, quote, each state has to ensure that any person having knowledge or legitimate interest who alleges that a person has been subjected to an enforced disappearance has the right to complain to a competent independent state authority and to have that complaint promptly, thoroughly, and impartially investigated by that authority, end quote. In a functioning democracy, police, internal affairs, and civil rights organizations would qualify as competent independent authorities. They are the fail-safes meant to hold law enforcement to account. But Charlotte had already complained to Cymru police. She had pleaded to the authorities over and over again, only to find that her persistence was met with what appeared to her to be total inaction. The question that continues to haunt this investigation is a simple one as it is a devastating one. Were they looking for Travelle? While the law acknowledges that an investigation cannot always guarantee a specific result, it is only considered valid if it is carried out in a way that is capable of identifying and punishing those responsible. A lackadaisical investigation is not a thorough investigation. The Cymru authorities had not published any information at the time of this episode claiming a lack of resources. In the United States, police departments possess immense power to compel testimony and gather evidence, power that, in Ms. Croom's case, seems to remain strangely dormant. This leads us to wonder why the state did not offer Ms. Croom the most basic support, such as social services or the reimbursement of expenses incurred if she obtained those services herself. Perhaps most importantly, one must ask why Charlotte Croom and her community were denied the chance to meaningfully participate in an inquiry, to provide testimony on what they knew to be true. We'll be looking into this next week, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to this series, and we'll see you next time.